Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you online, this is Jay Schnitzer in Bedford. Welcome, everybody, to the next in our series of innovation talks. Thank you all for joining us and being here. Today, we are very, very pleased and proud to be able to enjoy the learnings from our speaker today, Nancy Colier. Nancy Colier is going to talk about the power of off, living a meaningful life in a digital world. She's hopefully will address some of the difficulties that arise from trying to meet the demands of technology while being present in a life that feels nourishing and deeply satisfying. I think a lot of us who multitask, even as some of us in the room today and online are doing right at this moment, feel the stress related to that and trying to be in 2 or 3 places, at least in our heads at one time. I think she's going to give us some insights as to tools and practices to realign our time and our attention, particularly in line with our deeper values, and hopefully address some of the things that we all think about in this domain. She is also a widely published author, has a terrific book which we are going to raffle off in the back, hopefully to some folks here in the room, and encourage you all to listen carefully because I think we're going to really enjoy her speech. Nancy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and I'm delighted to be here. And in honor of the title of the book, let's go ahead and turn our devices off. Not on silent, no crazy, revolutionary. I'm going to come around and check and make sure. And just see when you do that, if you do that, how you feel. If there is a little anxiety, right? Don't be terrified. We have ambulances out front. And you know, I gave a talk last week, and not kidding, the woman did not know where the off button was. She never turned her phone off. So I actually instructed her on how to turn it off. So let's turn them off and just see. We're laughing, but it sort of speaks to what I'm here to talk about. Before I start, I'm going to talk for a little while, maybe as long as 50 minutes, 45 probably. And I don't know how your attention spans are. There's nothing to look at but me, and no screen. So this might be challenging, but it's kind of old school in that way. And then I want to open it up to know whatever are the obstacles for you in living a meaningful life, or whatever technology causes in your life that you're not quite sure how to work with. So we'll get to that. But before we do, I would love to just have us just ground for a moment, just kind of move from the morning to now. We generally are so scattered that it's a good thing to just start by closing the eyes, looking away from the pizza for just a sec. And thank you, Nahum, for being wise and bringing pizza, because it always brings people. So close your eyes and just consciously unhook right now from whatever thoughts are spinning in the mind, whatever the to-do list is for this afternoon, whatever challenges the morning has brought, and bring your attention down into the body. So feeling yourself landing in the chair, feel what your sits bones are touching, feel what your back is leaning against, feel what your hands are touching. Notice the quality and the temperature of the air passing your skin. And notice any noises, any sounds reaching your ears. And now bring your attention more specifically into your jaw. And just for a moment, just invite your jaw to relax. Letting the jaw hang. Feeling the muscles in the face softening. Relaxing the public, the game face. Moving your attention now down into the shoulders, inviting the shoulders to just drop down just for a moment. Relaxing through the shoulders and the upper back. Just letting the morning wash off. Now moving your attention down into often the mothership of stress, the belly, and just allowing the belly to relax. Letting the belly find a shape of ease, letting go of any holding in, holding on. Now just sweeping through and inviting this whole body that we often forget we have, just to relax. Release any tightness. Unravel, if you will. And let's close with a really nice, deep breath through the nose, and a really slow, long exhalation. And let's do that 2 more times. And when you're ready, opening your eyes and coming back to the space. Just notice, if you would, if you're just a little bit more landed, a little more arrived here, not quite so scattered, and it's often a very short journey to here. Just means we have to bring in our body. So this is a little bit of a different talk. I often give talks on very specific things that we can do, and for many reasons, I've decided to start giving more talks on this issue of a meaningful life, and what does that mean? And what am I seeing in the field? Because I, speak all over the country to many different kinds of audiences. But why did I write this book? I wrote this book this time because as a psychotherapist and a mindfulness teacher and an interfaith minister, I was seeing so much anxiety in my office, just a rise that was mind-boggling. And people come in, for their once-a-week session, and they have phones on both arms of the chairs, and they're on during their sessions. Nobody unplugs almost anymore, even during a therapy session. And people talk about living on this hamster wheel, living in this way that they can't get off. They don't know how to get, they can't stop. They can't stop the noise. And they feel overwhelmed often by work. That, the phone, it's wonderful to be able to work remotely, but it's kind of the Trojan horse, that once it's in the house, you can't not work. And so this blurring of the line between public and private. And, this sense of general overwhelm that is hard to miss, and loss of a sense of meaning in their lives. What am I doing all this for? What part of this is really meaningful? Work is meaningful, perhaps, but where are the deeper connections to what my life is about? And of course, with kids, trying to figure out how on earth to raise healthy children in this world. A big question, really big question. Kids with real self-esteem. And, how to not have the whole home environment be one screaming match about getting off the phone, which my home was. That's all we did was fight about technology. And the only time we really talked to each other was at the charging station when we bumped into each other. You know, you have 3%, well, I'm 2, you know, move, right? That became the family dynamic. And also, to be perfectly frank, my own addiction, because I was one of those people checking every 5 minutes. For what? I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. Nothing. I was not being contacted by the CIA. I was not on, you know, any presidential committees. And I was checking frantically. So I really wanted to investigate, what is all this about? What are we doing? We're headed in this direction, right? So how do we do this in a way that we can maintain a sense of well-being? So just to get that topic out of the way, people ask me, is it really an addiction? Is this real? Undoubtedly, it's an addiction. Undoubtedly. We have lots and lots of research now, you probably know about it, right, where the MRI studies show it's very similar to cocaine addiction in what it does inside the brain. So when you turn that laptop on and ding, you know, we're getting that dopamine hit. There's a reason that we get hooked. It's real. And when you can't get to your phone, or the notifications are going off, or whatever it might be, that flood of cortisol is real. So we're living right now in a state of constant fight or flight. We don't know in the long term what that's going to do to our immune systems, to the cancer rates. We have lots of information about what cortisol does. We also have the withdrawal symptoms, right? We all know that. You've seen somebody who forgot or is out of juice, and they really look like somebody who needs an EpiPen, right? They're running around really out of their minds. You know, I know people that'll drive 40, 50 miles to go back and get their device. So withdrawal is real. We have people that are continuing to use even though it's negatively affecting their social life, their home life, their work life, their health, and yet they continue to use. We have lots and lots of people coming now that really, really want to cut down and don't know how, and don't, much like drink. But this is more like an eating disorder because we have to figure out how to do it, right? We can't just cut out like we can with the bottle. We have to figure this out. Technology is in our life, and it's a wonderful thing, but we have to learn how to use it mindfully and with awareness. That's the key. So yes, it is an addiction. The only difference I would say between this addiction and any other addiction is, for one thing, we've all drunk the Kool-Aid, right? We're all in. And in other addictions, eventually it takes away your life, right? You lose your family, you lose your job, whatever it might be. This addiction, it makes you an insider, right? You've got your glittery case, you're at the Genius Bar, you're good to go. This addiction can work for you in certain ways. Some people think it gets you to move up in the work ladder. And the other thing different about this addiction, I would say, is that in other addictions, we don't have the behemoths, the big companies, bringing on addiction specialists. In this one, we do. All the big companies have people on staff that are trying to figure out how to get us addicted, right? Because addiction is good for business. So that's a big impediment. So yes, it is absolutely real. And the thing that I want to talk about today, though, is 4 things, really, that people talk to me about all the time. And hundreds and hundreds of interviews I've done and lots of groups and so on. What people are dying for right now seem to be 4 things. 1, they want silence. They want quiet. People are craving a way to stop all the noise, not just the noise outside, but the noise inside the mind. They want to stop all the tasks. They want time to be quiet, right? It's part of why a whole travel industry has opened up where you spend $25,000 to be off the grid, right? And then when the plane lands back in wherever you are, you're texting, you're back on texting, wheels have landed, what do I need to do, right? So, but we crave quiet right now, a break. Secondly, people are craving connection. That's the thing people are talking about. Connection with other people. connection with themselves. Despite all of this communicating that we're doing, what we're finding is that the loneliness rates have gone from 11% to 40% in the last 10 years. So something is not working about the way we're communicating. We want connection. The third thing is, how do I be present? I don't know how to be present anymore. I'm multitasking, constantly, and yet I want to remember, what does it mean to be in one place, right? And finally, people really talk about meaning. What is the meaning of my life now as community has slipped away and a sense of what are we part of larger? What is the spiritual purpose of our life has sort of been replaced by this multitasking energy. So a lot about that. Meaning. What's the meaning of all this? So I want to break those down, if we can, a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about the why for each of them, and then some general about what to do maybe about it, not maybe. And then at the end of the talk, I'll give some real specifics. So let's talk about noise for one thing, right? This sense of noise, the sense of task. And part of that is coming from really just the amount of noise. There is a study that says that the amount of noise in the last 10 years has gone up something like 75% in our lives. Just that, you go to the airport, there are 14 screens going. There's no place that you can hide. The bathroom stalls often have music coming in now. We just have noise, right? And at the same time, we have this new sort of busyness where we have to be available to everybody 24/7. Right? We're available to everyone else, but we're not available to ourselves. So there's a kind of chronic tasking. A lot of people say we're not focused anymore, but I make the argument that we're hyper-focused. Our attention is always focused down on something. We're always doing something. So what has been removed is silence and also gaps. We have no gaps anymore in our days, right? We move from task to task to task, and we are craving gaps. We actually need gaps. For the nervous system to calm down, we need gaps. And I don't know, does anybody here feel sometimes overwhelmed by just the amount of tasking and noise? Is that sometimes, yeah. I think that's a kind of basic human condition right now. It's a kind of information overload, right? I mean, I recently bought a smart house, and that was one of the most horrifying decisions I ever made. To figure out how to operate the house was about this big of a tomb, that it's so complicated now to run our lives in many ways, and we're craving a simplicity. So what is it that we can do about that, right? Well, I'm here to say that, first of all, your need for silence is part of the human organism. In silence, something happens where the default mode network comes up, and when that happens, so the nervous system calms down, and we have space for the body and the mind to process our lives. What's happened? How are we in the middle of this? To contemplate, but it's a biological kind of processing where we take in all the information and we move it around and we know what to do with it, right? So we create change in the default mode network. In the default mode network, you might know this, I'm sure you do, when we take that walk, we wander like a happy dog, right? No destination. Our flashes of brilliance and creativity come in the gaps. We need this time, right? We don't come up with that great creativity when we're focused. So I'm suggesting today that we create silence on purpose, that you insert silence into your life, that you insert downtime. Downtime is critical for brilliance. Downtime is critical for well-being. So that is an absolute necessary ingredient. And to remember, right, that more is not always better. That sometimes less is what we need. And we're living in a culture where it's all about more. So I'm suggesting to follow what is sometimes an intuitive sense that I want less, that is legitimate and what actually leads us to a state of wellness, right? So I'm going to move on now. I'm going to hit each of these kind of shortly, but hopefully right to the main point of it. Let's talk about connection. So people are dying for connection with each other. But how are we behaving? How are we actually behaving when we're with each other? Usually we have the phone, right? We meet for a drink, we've got the phone in between us. So we know that when the phone is between us, that drastically impacts our sense of connection across the table. And even if that phone is off, when the phone is there, it is destroying connection, right? So when the phone is on the table, just know that nothing really real can happen there. We are not, how can I put it? We are not with each other in a deep way. We are distracted. I recently spent an afternoon with a friend, and the whole time I was with her, she was taking texts, and of course it's from her child, so it's reasonable, right? But not one moment during that time, and I think we all do this, was I fully with her, right? And our greatest gift is our attention. It is the greatest gift we can give another human being. Our children, our friends, our partners, anyone is our full attention. And we're not doing that right now. We're actually not doing that. Again, the word gaps comes. Right now in most of your meetings, probably when you have a break, everybody gets on their device, right? So the breaks, the gaps, are where connection is made, right? Where we used to lean over and say, you know, hey, I know your mom wasn't doing so well. How's that going? Or, hey, did your kid get into that school? The gaps are where human connections are formed. So be mindful, right, when you're filling all the gaps with a device. The absence of gaps is the absence of connection, right? At the same time, we are beginning to expect from our human relationships the same things as we expect from our devices, right? Ease, speed, immediacy, fun, entertainment, right? And what is it that real relationships take? Hard work, effort, time. These are the real things. So we're not putting that in, right? Because we're expecting, and when it's not working, we're out, right? We're ghosting. We're ghosting. And we're seeing more than ever time, engagements are broken, marriages are ending, rates we've never seen, because the human relationship does not mirror the device. Ease, fun, speed, immediacy, convenience, they are the wrong gauges for what makes for a human relationship. So that talks about, in part, our relationship with other people, not giving them our attention, expecting them to give us something like our device. Then it brings me to the topic of our relationship with ourselves. This is perhaps one of the most primary. We are no longer a destination for ourselves. We are not a place that we are interested in being, quite the opposite, in fact. We view ourselves as something to outrun. If we could only get to our grave without ever bumping into ourselves, right? We keep the devices going, the TVs are going, the iPad is going, the iPhone is going, whatever is going, but God, don't let me bump into myself and my own thoughts. This is how we live now. And I see people all the time who are terrified, believe it or not, of their own company. We don't see our own presence as a place, right? At the same time, our sense of self-esteem, as we all know, it's not just kids. It's based on the likes. It's based on the thumbs up. It's based on my last post, right? How am I doing? How many followers do I have? It's not, what do I think of me? It's, what do I think you think of me? Which, of course, is a total projection anyway, right? But simultaneously, we're living in this way where it's a kind of Instagram culture. So we are constantly comparing. We compare by nature, but we are constantly comparing ourselves to, oh, look at them. Well, they're in Bali. Oh, look at them. You know, they're on some yacht. Look at them. You know, why aren't I drinking? Why aren't I drinking champagne in the morning, right? None of it exists. It's all false. And yet we're trying to keep up with some sort of false image, comparing ourselves to a mirage, really, an avatar, right? And this online character that is our persona is replacing the person that we are. That's a really big deal. So we're more interested in keeping that person going, who's the person everyone else sees. This is happening in a technology-driven culture. Plus, we have forgotten, this all has to do with our relationship with ourselves. We've forgotten that we can know things from our own experience, right? We don't have to Google everything. We can know things by looking this way. It's miraculous, right? We actually are the keeper of wisdom, but not just knowledge. Knowledge might be out that way in this information age. Wisdom, our intuition, our knowing is this way. So, it's funny too, I was walking down the street with a friend the other day, and the woman had a double stroller, and we opened the door for her to get her kids in, and that's an experience where in the past, you might have walked down that street and just sort of shared with yourself that moment of human connection, just having done a favor for someone, right? And my friend, who's quite a bit younger than I am, she was right online, hashtag kindness, hashtag sweet moment, hashtag, woman with stroller, love babies. And I thought how interesting it is, because even that moment can't be experienced inside oneself. Even that moment, the meaning of it is determined by what comes back from your audience. So that's a fundamental change, right, in how we are experiencing ourselves, which is our most intimate relationship we will ever have. So what to do, right? Connection with others. Please turn your phones off when you are with people that matter to you and even people that don't. You will be shocked by what can grow when the phone is off. That you might make a friend, you might learn something interesting if you bring your attention to another human being. Can you ask yourself at a very fundamental level, am I showing up? Am I really here? Am I here fully with this other human being, right? That is a really wonderful question. Am I awake right here, right now? It's interesting, I was at a corporate investment bank actually also last week, and a new hire was meeting with human resources, and I loved what she said to me. She said, when the new hire met with her, he said to her, I love your company. She said, why? And he said, because when I was interviewing with all the different people I interviewed, their phones were off. And she said, what do you mean? And he said, well, when I went to any other interviews, while I was interviewing, people were on their phones. So this is the new norm. You don't have to live by that norm, right? You can actually show up and have all of you be present. Another thing I would suggest highly, get together face to face. Feels so archaic. I applaud you all for coming, not just for the pizza, but to be in a room with other human beings is different. It's different than doing something remotely. It is fundamentally different if somebody picks up the phone too and calls you than emails you, right? If it's somebody's birthday, if you send them a card, it's different, right, than if you get it on Facebook, right, with a reminder from Facebook. The human being sitting next to the human being is a radically different experience. So be with people face to face. You're right that you feel differently after you've done that. It has been studied time immemorial. I would say also, if you wouldn't say something to somebody in person, don't say it to them in email. We are capable of great unkindness because we are not seeing the result of, we are not hearing, we are not looking in the eyes of somebody when we're saying some of the things we're saying. So when you connect with other people, if you wouldn't say it in person, don't say it. Don't write it. Don't text it. Please don't text it, right? So also another thing I often recommend is, we have this new expression, I'll pencil you in, right? Maybe something better. Who knows? We live in the better generation, right? What else? What else is there? Is there something better that might come in? Put your people in pen and show up, right? Live by an integrity that you can go to bed at night. That's what I suggest. And, this sort of, there's a disease of last-minute-itis where, you're already at the restaurant to meet your friend and you get that rain emoji, oops, rain check, right? Because, of course, they don't have to say that to you, and because they were probably lost in something online, focused, and couldn't get out of the house. We do a lot of that now. We don't live by a kind of ethical standard by which our friendships require our commitment. And when we put commitment, we put people in pen, we show up, right? We get up from our seat, away from the internet. What we get back is what nourishes us. It's the food of the human being, right? It's what actually makes our life feel meaningful. What we put in, our connections with others, is what comes back to us. The other last thing I would say about our relationships with other people, when you ask yourself, am I really here? Ask yourself, am I listening? Listening is a dying art, right? We usually got a pod in of some podcast, we're learning something. We're half there, right? And the little tiny bit of the pie chart that's left over, we're usually busy trying to formulate our answer that shows that we're a certain kind of person. When we really listen, deep listening, right, we're out of the way. We're not thinking about what's for dinner. We're not thinking about, I don't have enough time to be having this conversation. We're not trying to come up with an answer while the other person is talking. We're not trying to formulate a persona that will be seen as a certain way. We're listening. So it's a wonderful question to ask ourselves when we're with other human beings. Listening is the nectar. It's the nectar of relationship. So am I really listening, or am I thinking about my to-do list? Most of the time we're thinking about our to-do list, right? And we know when they laugh, we laugh. We know all the things to do, right, even though we haven't paid attention at all. Paying attention is love. It is love. There's no separation between listening, attention, and love. These are the same thing. So when it comes to being with ourselves, I would say same questions. Am I showing up for myself? Am I present? Am I here for myself, right? Our body, right, we can always use our body as a way to enter ourselves, right? The truth is that everything you need, you already have. And when you really realize that, you have a different reverence. And it's not a narcissistic reverence, it's a kind of knowing that the answers are this way, right? So I encourage you in whatever way that forms in you, and it's very personal, but that you make yourself a destination. That contemplation, a lost art, is actually a part of your everyday. How am I doing in the middle of this life, this crazy life? How am I? How are you? And not, how are you good, like we do these days? How are you good? I guess so, right? But you actually ask yourself that question and sit and wait and listen to what comes. So we're not just listening that way, but we're listening this way. These are really life-changing skills, right? And, even just right now, if you close your eyes and you take a deep breath, once again, the breath is always our portal inside. It's just a way of connecting with yourself. It's a way of being with self as a destination, so that we practice that. We practice that on a regular basis. I'm going to move on. These are huge philosophical topics, but I'm just touching in on them, and if anything resonates, you'll bring it back. The third, I'm kind of putting the meat between the bread now, being present. So that could be a day-long workshop, and often it is. But for our purposes, why are we so not present? What happened to presence? Right now, the recent studies show that we're here about 50% of the time. I think it's more like about 20, 30% of the time, where we're really where we are, right? And the fact is, we're happier in now. We're happier. When we're in the past and the future, we're usually suffering. We're usually not happy. That is just boots on the ground field work. And we're distracted. You know, in 2000, our attention span was 12 seconds. In 2017, it was 8 seconds, which is sort of an irrelevant piece of information, except to know that a goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds. So we're a second below a goldfish, right? So we're always distracted. We're always multitasking. And you know, it's interesting, we're living in the age of information, but information can become a way that we dodge the moment. I was in Provincetown last summer, and I'll never forget, I was in a wonderful Jeep driving through the dunes, and the guy next to me spent the entire dune ride talking about the quality of the tires, the Jeep make, I got an finally I just put music in, because information is a way that we don't experience now, right? We're all up here in our heads about information, and information is spectacular, but it's a way to be mindful that we can be mindful of using it to get out of here. So, you know, it's an interesting thing too that another way we use technology to avoid being present is we're somewhere, right, and we're taking selfies of ourselves, right? So let's say we're at the museum, right? Oh, look at me, I'm looking at art. Look, I'm a cultural person. I'm looking at art, right? So we're using life in our own PR campaign. We're not actually in that museum. We're not in that experience, but we're using it to say something about our identity. So that is a profound shift, right? From being in the moment to using the moment to document us. The whole thing is about an identity game now. Simultaneously, we are using technology to photograph life, to capture it, to stop it. Look at me, I have a life. I have 64 gigabytes in my iPhoto file. I haven't been in any of that. I haven't experienced any of it in my cells, but I have it, right? Look at the life I'm living. It's like we're using technology to try and capture life. And what we're denying all the time is it's not capturable. It's fleeting. This moment, no matter how spectacular it is, will die shortly. And there'll be another moment that replaces it until there won't. But it's a kind of, there's a fear of mortality that we use our phone to grab life, to stop it. And what the cost of that is to be directly experiencing this incredible blessing that is to be born, to be incarnated, right? So we get to have it, but we don't get to live it. That's the trade-off. But the biggest obstacle, I would say, of all of these things, right? We're not just not in the present moment because we're candy crushing. That's the obvious, right? The biggest obstacle is this: mind, thought. Right? Because what technology does, it's kind of like crack cocaine for the mind. It amps up the mind. Information, entertainment, stuff to do, right? If we wake up in the middle of the night, we can research our next vacation. We can do anything. We never have to put this to bed. We never have to quiet the monkey, right? In Buddhist philosophy, this is a monkey mind who's drunk a bottle of wine and been stung by a whole bunch of bees. Right? That's pretty close to mine anyway. Anybody else experience this sometimes like that? Yeah. So tech amps up the mind, right? So the thing to know about the mind, because we love the mind is this incredible, amazing instrument, but it only lives in the past and the future, really. It needs a problem to solve. This monkey needs something to do. In now, there's no problem to solve. It's idle. It freaks out. And it bumps back to the past and the future, to a problem. Give me a problem. Give me something to do, right? So when we're in the past and the future, again, we're usually suffering. It's a familiar kind of suffering. But we don't want to be in the present moment because the mind is allergic. It kind of goes extinct, if you will, in the present moment. It's not needed. There's just direct experience. There's senses, there's living, there's being, right? We have become human doings, not human beings. So in the moment, the mind goes, where do I go, right? I got to do something. So It can't feel itself. The other thing that we do with this mind that creates a great deal of suffering is we live in a constant narrative, a constant storyline, right? So direct experience now, the present moment is happening, but we're not, again, in that present moment. Where we are is, why is it happening? What does what's happening mean about me and my life? And what do I need to do about it? Those are usually the three biggies, right? So we've got a task for the mind, but we're not here. We're not in now. It's really pretty radical these days to show up for now. And what you find when you show up for now and you drop the storyline and you just directly experience through senses or whatever is happening, this incredible sense of joy appears. It's like when you start living that way, and meditation is one path there, but there are many paths, you discover that this is what's creating the suffering. So we use this very selectively as a great instrument of development and all sorts of things. But when it drops out and we're just here, this incredible experience happens that can only be described as joy. This is the allergy to joy. So that's a lot. What do we do? How do we be present? So first and foremost, notice. Am I here? Again, the biggest question of all. Am I in this moment, or am I lost in a whole bunch of thoughts? Am I on that beach in Hawaii? Am I figuring out how to get my kid into that school? Am I actually anywhere near this moment? Anywhere. Again, the body. This is the portal into now. The mind lives past and future. Body lives now. Has to. Body can only live in this moment. The breath is this incredible gift. If you're alive, you're breathing. Your breathing is into now. It drops you right down into the center of now, right? So if you catch hold of a breath, you're right back in now. And if you can start to practice just watching thought, Probably, does anyone here do any kind of mindfulness practice? Oh yeah, so a bunch of people. What we learn in mindfulness practice is, it's kind of like an aquarium. When you go to an aquarium, right, you see all the fish go by. You don't dive in the tank, unless you're psychotic. You don't dive in the tank and jump on board. You see the fish go by. When you start to practice mindfulness, you start to be able to have a little bit of separation between you and the thoughts, the fish swimming by, and then you can decide. That's the whole thing. Which thought do I want to follow? You don't have to be chasing everything. You're not a prisoner to this, because this is essentially kind of an out-of-order computer. It's a ticker tape. It just spews habitually information. 98% of thoughts are repetitive, 80% are negative. So we don't want to have to be at the mercy of this instrument. Mindfulness and meditation practices teach you, they create a space so you can a little bit watch what is being spit out and then decide more where you want to enter. So what it gives you is it gives you freedom. It gives you choice. We can also ask the question to ourselves, who is this mind talking to? Who's listening? Who's listening to these thoughts? That's mind-boggling, right? And what starts to happen when you start to ask questions like that is the paradigm shifts, and you inhabit the place of awareness more than you inhabit the thought place. You're less identified with what's coming out of the machine and more identified with the awareness that's aware of it. And again, that has a spaciousness to it that is life-changing. And talk about getting off the hamster wheel. That's the deeper way of getting off the hamster wheel. So last thing I'm going to talk about before some specifics is this topic of meaning. Very simply, we're not putting our time and attention into the things that really matter to us. We are not, our time and our attention are our greatest assets. And where we are placing them right now are not in the areas that feed our spirits, right? Our minds are being fed, but our hearts, our spirits, our bodies are not. So we're feeling kind of spiritually anorexic right now. And we have this new God. The God is productivity. And we chase productivity at all cost. And productivity is wonderful. But again, in terms of the human animal, team human, which we still are, at least for the time being, right? That human being needs things other than productivity. So our values have fundamentally changed as well, in that some of the values that feed us, like ethics, like integrity, like hard work, like dignity, like service, right? They've been replaced to a large extent by fame, popularity, entertainment, right? This is what we value now. Ease, speed, convenience, again. These are values that don't create meaning. So if you're feeling that way, if you're feeling that parts of you are starving a deeper experience of being in existence, it's real. And it needs to be honored, in a very simple way. Take an inventory. What feeds me, really feeds me? If it's time with my kids, uninterrupted, if it's nature, if it's a spiritual practice, whatever it is, it's a very private contemplation. And get those, this is not rocket science, get those things into your life. Because we've forgotten that we actually need things other than to be productive. We need to be fed other than in our minds. So I'm giving you permission and the prescription to feed the parts of you that are often neglected these days. Add those to your life. So I'm going to just talk some very practical things, very, very boots on the ground things that you can do in your life around technology. It's a little bit of a change of gears here. And again, people come to me all the time from around the world. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to live a meaningful life. Tell me, give me the list, right? We want a list. And I often, I'll give them a list, but you can buy the book. But it's interesting, too, because the publisher made me put a detox in there. It was not my inclination, but, she was rightly saying people are going to want a list. So, but the point really is bigger than that. The point is this is about spiritual autonomy. This is about taking ownership of your life, right? And for the most part, I don't know anybody that's come back yet from being gone. We don't know if we're coming back. And so this is the one, right? So this is about taking ownership of this life, that this life matters. And I can give you a list, but the list really at a deeper level needs to come from you, about what nourishes you, and to get that into your life, right? Because we don't get this time back. A friend of mine's father died last week, and I love what she said to me. She said, the problem is we always think we have more time. And that is so true, right? We can fritter away all these moments, and then we can't, right? So, when I've sat with a lot of people over years as they're dying, and nobody talks about their followers. Nobody talks about their score on Foursquare. Nobody talks about the work they got done. They talk about love. They talk about people. So that all said, the list is coming. But this is really about finding freedom in technology, not from it. Living freely inside technology. So, first of all, every time you use your device, if you can, ask yourself real briefly, what would I have to feel if I didn't use right now, right? So we're breaking the habit. Even if you use, just ask yourself, what do I not want to feel? Because we're using it as addicts use their substance, right? We're using it not to feel what we don't want to feel. Boredom, vacuumness, anxious, whatever it is, boom, we can get on, right? Same as any addiction. We don't want to feel what we're feeling. So just invite that question of awareness into your everyday practice with the phone. Pause 1 second. Am I really using for work? Am I really using because I have to check now? What's right here, right now I'm trying to get away from? Consciousness. It's about bringing consciousness into our lives. What I said about silence, I have seen profound results by people adding 10 minutes of silence every day into their lives. It's really, really important. And again, all of this is in the book, but I'll say it out loud. Downtime, this business of wandering like a happy dog with no destination, it allows the system to come back down, right? The book is called The Power of Off, not just because we don't turn our devices off, but because we don't turn ourselves off. We're on. We have to let ourselves not be on. We need it for basic well-being. Again, the breath, use the breath. It is your entry point. It is always here. It always drops you into the center of now. Use a sense loop. If you're feeling scattered, take 30 seconds to go through each sense. What am I seeing? Just take in the sights. What am I hearing? Focus in on noise, sound. What am I smelling? What am I feeling? What's happening in my body? What am I tasting? Go through the 5 senses. If you feel up to it, what's the chatter in my mind? In the East, they consider thought the sixth experience there. So just do a loop and do one by one. That'll ground you right into now. Get a body practice into your life. Whatever it is. Could be walking, could be yoga, could be exercise of any kind. We're living here. We've forgotten that there's something that moves this head around. We need some kind of a body practice. Simultaneously, we need stress management, right? A lot of the reason we use the device is because of stress. And then it's a feedback loop. It creates its own stress. As soon as we go on, there are 30 other things we need to do that we have forgotten. So we use it for anxiety, and it creates anxiety. Find some other techniques. There are 8,000 ways of finding these out, and we need them. It is now that we actually need these. Get your phone out of the bedroom. It's really important. Get your iPad out of the bedroom. Tons of studies to show what it does to sleep. Terrible. I sound like someone else. Terrible. But I will speak in full sentences. It's really bad for sleep. And it's really important to have a tech-free zone. And if you can make your bedroom that, it's really helpful. The first half hour of the day and the last hour, off technology. The first half hour is even more important than the end, because in the first half hour, if we start our day just reacting right away to what's coming in, the whole day is determined externally, right? We never start with what is our intention for the day or what is important to us. All those really important questions for living a meaningful life, they're out the window. We're just in reactive mode, and it'll go all the way until we put our head on the pillow. So if you can get a half an hour to just start a day that also acknowledges the amazingness, if you will, of having a day, some gratitude practice in there. And the end, it also calms the nervous system down and gets the body ready for sleep if we can get the last hour or at least half hour. If you use your phone as an alarm clock, get an old-fashioned alarm clock, or really just use it as that. But don't start the day with your phone. When people come to your home, get a basket and have everybody put their phones in the basket. You'll find that the interaction is so much more meaningful. Old-fashioned, read a book. Remember how to read, right? And if you have kids, make sure that they're reading. Write a letter every now and again instead of writing an email, right? Pick up the phone. Actually call somebody instead of sending a text. And for goodness sake, turn off your notifications. Notifications are like injecting cortisol into your body, right? So many studies have been done that when that bell goes off or that train whistle or whatever it is, you literally are sending cortisol streaming through your body. So you can set them for emergencies only. That ding, ding, ding all day is doing great harm to your body and therefore to your nervous system. Set times to check in the day. Don't graze through the day if you can. Every 2-3 hours, whatever you need, set a time. The grazing, again, is very disruptive to the nervous system. So if you can get a 4-hour break in between checks, right, that is a really good amount of time because something different can happen. Every 2 hours, you need to take a 15-minute break. That is also very important. I'm almost finished. Set a text policy. So I tell my friends that I don't respond to texts until about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, because one of the main reasons that people are so anxious is because they think that if I don't respond, the person's going to think I'm dead, right? So I have to respond because why aren't you responding? It's been 30 seconds. Where are you? Where are you? Okay, are you kidnapped? Are you in a trunk? Where are you, right? We all get these texts, right? So if they know ahead of time, I don't respond immediately to text, you get to decide whether or not you want to respond or not. But that has to be done ahead. In terms of work-life balance, I'm working with a lot of different corporations right now to suggest that they take on a policy like in Europe where managers are penalized if they reach out to their charges after a certain hour. It hasn't taken hold yet in the States, no surprise. But if you can for yourself, set a shut-off time. After this time, I don't respond, right? And if you can talk to whoever is above you about that starting a policy here where that's respected. It's something that is just beginning to form. And on vacations, please try and get off. Really and truly, try and take a vacation. Americans take the least vacation time of anywhere in the world, and when interviewed, it's mostly because they're terrified of the workload they'll come back to. And they're so anxious all the time on the vacation that they'd rather just not go. So try and take a vacation. And finally, if you can, once a month or bi-monthly, take a tech-free day. The reports back from the field, again, radically life-changing. Not, people say to me, well, can I do Netflix? Again, I'm not a babysitter, right? If Netflix for you is separate from what we're talking about here, use Netflix, right? But taking a day fully off, you remember what it's actually like to live that human life, that slower life where you connect. So that's a really wonderful thing to do. So in summary, I would say this is about reclaiming your life, right? People say to me all the time, the horse is out of the barn, we're stuck. Completely false, completely false. Every moment we have an opportunity to wake up and live a mindful moment, every single moment. And the truth is, when you find that you've fallen down the rabbit hole, that is a moment to celebrate because it's a moment of awakeness. Wow, I'm not here. So take that moment and come back to here. Turn off the devices. Be with who you're with. Be with yourself. Take in the light. Feel the sensations. Remember the body, right? Every moment we have this incredible opportunity to be where we are. Horse is never out of the barn. So again, remembering that we always think there's more time. When you really live the flip side of that and you recognize this moment matters, there are no throwaway moments, and to live your life from that place as it relates to technology and everything else. And I hope that that inspires you to live more awake. And that's it.